And it is time for the Gianna Volpe Report, brought to you by Maximus Health and Fitness, 130 East Main Street in Riverhead. Good morning, Gianna.
Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning.
The woman is, just so that you know, friends, we've had Gianna Volpe up here in an evening gown, a strapless evening gown. We got the pictures of her in the two-piece on the beach in L.A. getting a tan. We had her up on the roof. She was doing snow angels in the snow. We were worried about her sliding off the roof because it's got a little bit of a pitch to it. And today she's wearing a black suit with a white... What's the occasion?
I wanted to look nice for you because I wanted to hear what you'd say.
Well, I mean, the woman looks like really good.
Stop it. We're going to do this every week.
Yeah, she stopped. Yeah, stop it. I love it. I know.
Yeah, don't
Women
stop.
like it when you notice how they're dressed. Or so I...
That's true.
It is true.
See?
And we got Alie up here, Alie Shaper, wearing, what is that pattern?
Argyle.
Argyle.
Yeah, Argyle and stripes. It's very preppy.
Yes, yeah. Clashing patterns, very in.
Yeah.
Very in these days. So Alie Shaper was actually one of the first people I met when I moved to the East End 5 years ago. And it was because I went with the McCarries to Brooklyn. They were doing a tasting, I think at Brooklyn.
Oh, Brooklyn Uncorked, maybe?
No, it was a private tasting. I think it was at Brooklyn Winery.
Oh, I don't think I was at that.
No, you weren't there.
But
We
you guys
came
came
to
afterwards. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
went to Brooklyn Enology, which is Alie Shaper's. It's a tasting room, and it features wine from everywhere.
Yeah, it functions as my winery's tasting room, but alongside of all of our wines, we showcase a bunch of wines, spirits, beers exclusively from New York to kind of give like a little window into what's happening in the New York beverage scene, which is really exciting.
And it was so cool. I remember you guys had what was it? There was something really cool with barrels. I think you had actually.
Oh, in the design of the we took apart some retired barrels. I was going to say defunct, but that's not really very nice to say about barrels. We continued their life. We took them apart and we took all the individual staves and nailed them to the wall in a basket weave pattern.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
And
really
it's
cool.
so
Very
cool.
cool texture. Yeah.
I took a lot of photos there. I had just graduated with my degree in photojournalism, so I had my camera, and I was shooting all over in the tasting room and outside. I know there's some cool graffiti around where Brooklyn Enology is. So Brooklyn Enology, you guys made your wine out here though.
Yeah, and we still do.
At Premium Wine Group. So then, fast forward 5 years. This past summer, I was working at Lombardi's on Love Lane, and Alie comes in because she had just moved to the East End. So tell me, how did you come to live on the East End? And then how did you end up becoming the consulting winemaker at Croteau?
Aha. The East End has always had charm for me, and of course, working production for the winery out here, naturally I had to come out here all the time. So every time I would come out to work, I'd say, I'm not here long enough. It's magical. I like to say, all my friends are sick of me saying, if this isn't heaven, then I don't want to go there.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's true.
It is. It is. I mean, there's such an interesting population here. People working on so many creative, literally down-to-earth projects and entrepreneurial
Ventures.
Yeah, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, too early for vocabulary.
I hear you.
But yeah, it's just a great sense of connection to the land and appreciation for it. But also, it's such a worldly place too. I love that. So after living for a decade in Brooklyn, which is basically what inspired me to start a winery at all, I just realized I also needed more of that connection to the land in my life.
What was it about Brooklyn that inspired you to start a winery?
Really, the community itself. I moved into Brooklyn in 2005, Yes, 2005. This is becoming ancient history now.
From where?
Yeah.
From where? Where?
I was living on Long Island. I've bounced around a bit in my life. I grew up in Nassau County. I ended up in the Finger Lakes for college.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, studied engineering at Cornell University. And that's where I got introduced to Finger Lakes wines, and that began my love affair with wine in New York. After graduation, I ended up in the Silicon Valley because my degree is in engineering, so that's where all the jobs were back in the mid-'90s for engineers. So I kind of went thinking, this would be a fun experiment for a couple of years, and it turned into 4 years. And then I could, right before that sort of decline in the late 90s, early 2000s, I had ended up coming back to New York, but landed in the Hudson Valley, and that's where I got my start in the wine business. I started working for a tasting room up in the Hudson Valley.
Where?
In New Paltz. It used to be called Rivendell. It's now called Robibero, but they were unusual in that they were doing a very similar thing to what I'm doing now. They made their own wines, but in their winery tasting room they had other wines from producers around New York State. They opened up the vintage New York stores in Manhattan. There was one in Soho.
Cool.
Yeah, one in Soho, and then the second one opened on the Upper West Side on Broadway, I think. Anyway, but they were kind of way ahead of their time. But it was very formative for me to spend 3 years working with them, and that really got me engaged in the New York wine industry and got me very excited about it. So it's been an industry I've been a part of for 16 years now. So then, where was I going with this?
Well, all right. So talk about how you came out here permanently.
Yeah. So in the course of moving all around, Hudson Valley, I came back to Long Island, and then I was in Long Island for a couple of years, and then I had a lot of friends living in Brooklyn, and so I got inspired to move to Brooklyn because of this sort of same creative, entrepreneurial energy.
You've just been following it.
Yeah, seeking that out. So, and then when I got the idea for Brooklyn Enology, I said I wanted to use all New York grapes, and so the first place I went to source fruit was on the North Fork of Long Island. And I knew about Premium Wine Group, and it's basically the perfect place for me to get started. And so that started my commute back and forth between the East End and the West End, if you will.
Right.
And so, just over the years have fallen in love with it.
So where do you source your grapes, or have you sourced your grapes?
Yeah, from various vineyards in Cutchogue and Southold, Mattituck, Riverhead. I've even gotten some fruit from way out in Orient Point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then,
where was that?
There's a vineyard out there called Sargon Vineyards. It's pretty much.
Oh my gosh! Wait!
Mm-hmm.
Is Sargon? Is that still around?
Yeah, it's still there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like private?
Yeah, it's owned by one guy, and it has this big, beautiful gate out in front. Yes. Yeah,
and it's got a weird, it's like almost like a face.
It's like a Babylonian god, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember turning. It's right by the Orient Crab Shack.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I just turned on the road by accident, or I don't even remember why I was there.
Yeah.
But I came upon this gate, and I was like, "What?
What is that?
What is this place?"
It's beautiful back there too. It has like almost Tuscan landscaping style back there.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's neat.
So what is the guy like? What's he like, or what's?
I've only interacted with the actual vineyard manager. I don't know the owner very well at all.
Do they make wine?
No, they just sell the grapes.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it made me think of like Eyes Wide Shut. Like
Ooh, yeah.
like the
Yeah.
symbol. I was just
That's
like,
a blast from the past.
Yeah, and also very creepy and not appropriate at all. And I hope that they don't. I mean absolutely nothing by that. All I mean is that it was like very mysterious.
Yeah, that needs a separate radio show to talk about that.
Yes. It was just mysterious, and like I remember, I even called the tax assessor to find out about the property because I was so interested by that place. So that's really cool.
That's neat, but that's what makes the North Fork so interesting. You can turn down any little nook or cranny and find something else, and you're like, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah, where am I? Who? Or have someone. I had a guy come in. I manage a bar in Mattatuck, I had a gentleman come in, sit down, worked for the post office out here for 25 years. Never met him before. He's from Greenport, and he grew up in Brooklyn, and she Gerson Beach, and he with the bassist
Garrettson Beach.
Garrettson Beach.
Garrettson Beach.
Garrettson Beach by Sheepshead Bay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Here's some Brooklyn geography.
And
That doesn't come up every day.
he was a foster child who squealed the wheels on his foster parents because they were like using the foster kids, and he grew up with the original bassist from Foreigner.
Really?
And I was just like,
This world is so neat.
yeah, and out here, you just like you can't turn around without running into somebody with the strangest, coolest life story.
Yeah,
because
truth.
Because it's always, how did you get out here? And the people that grew up here and lived here for generations, they're the ones who have the most interesting stories of all.
Yeah, truthfully, yeah. And people have come from like kind of all corners of the earth.
Oh my
and
gosh,
have somehow
yes.
found this place.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I don't want to call it a black hole, but there's some kind of gravity going on here
Oh, yeah.
that draws in really interesting people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And you're one of them, absolutely.
Why, thank you.
So how did you... So Alie is now the consulting winemaker at Croteau Vineyards.
Yeah.
They make rosés,
Only rosé.
only rosé.
It's like a dream job.
So what is it for you about rosés that you love?
They're delicious for one, and of course, there's that very romantic thing about rosé, and it makes you think about the Mediterranean and the beautiful seaside landscapes of Provence and all of that. But they're also wines that can be just as varied as, say, any selection of white wine or red wine. You can make them out of pretty much any grape you can think of.
Right, because it's the way that you...
It's
make
all
it.
about the method of production. So it's not relegated to, say, 2 or 3 different grape varieties. So, anything that you can make out of red wine grapes or white wine grapes, you can make rosé out of. And rosé is an extremely versatile wine. It fills that blank where neither a white wine or a red wine will do for your meal. And I think rosé has been marketed as really kind of a summertime drink, but I'm definitely a proponent that it's an all-the-time drink. Sometimes you need something with a little bit more than what a white wine has to have with your meal. And maybe you don't want something quite as muscly as a red wine, and a rosé can just fit right in that middle. It can be such a great wine for a meal.
Well, Alie, we actually have to go to commercial break, so we're going to have you back on.
Yeah, okay.
To talk more about this 2015 rosé winemaking adventure.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
After we come back from the break, we'll talk with Hector from Arthur Murray Dance Studios.
And it didn't clip, okay?
Yes, it is.
It
It's
didn't
clipping.
clip. It's not clipping. It's not clipping.
The bass, it's not...
That's because of the recording you supplied.
You think so?
I guarantee it.
It didn't used to sound like that.
Still groovy.
It's still groovy.
I'm sorry.
JJ Gray and Mofro.
I have to do the billboard here.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Gianna Volpe Report, brought to you in part by Maximus Health and Fitness. Well, I feel like I'm a game show host announcer.
130 East
Main Street, Riverhead, and by Michael Evans, author of The Real Matrix. Now, here's the star of our show.
And Geritol.
I wonder if they still have that.
Was that quiz show? Geritol?
Geritol sponsored a lot of stuff in the 50s. And I saw the movie Quiz Show with Robert Redford.
Tim Robbins?
It was a great movie.
I love that.
And it was really, really correct. And a lot of its the facts were correct.
It's about,
It was about the quiz show scandal, the late 1950s.
That's so cool.
When Gianna Volpe was barely a gleam in her mommy's eye.
Yeah, like decades.
Yeah. And I, on the other hand, was a little boy.
You grew up in the 50s?
Late 50s.
That is so cool.
Late 50s.
They had great cars.
They're phenomenal cars.
Like the best.
Yeah.
So you remember that, like as a kid?
Well, we had a 1955 Pontiac, and it was like sitting in the living room. It really was. It was like sitting in a living room. But those cars were, first of all, they were huge, and the big thing, especially in the late 50s, were the two tones.
Yeah.
Like ours was like this copper on the bottom and white on the top.
Okay.
But there were always like these weird color combinations. I knew guys who had like, well, you saw them parked on the street, Fords with that were pink and black.
Oh, that's cool.
And then there were
I
whole
like the
bathrooms
Chevys,
that were
though.
done in pink and
I'm
black.
into the Chevys.
Chevy color combination for the 57 particularly.
Yes.
The most popular
Those
one
are
I
my
think was
favorite.
turquoise and white.
That is like 57
Really
Chevys. Like I would like. That's all right. You know what? My grandfather told me
You know how much that car would cost you to get that now?
$1 bajillion.
$40,000 easily.
That's so much monies.
I know.
That's more than like my student loan debt, which was the most monies I'd ever seen on.
Well,
It was like, you need to give me this much money, and I was like, what?
From where?
Yeah. What? That doesn't exist.
they just fall from the sky.
Yeah. That was the most hopeless day of my life, was the day I received my student loan. They were like, okay, it's been a year. Now give us all this money. And I was like,
No, I don't think so.
because I've always been so afraid of debt, and I've never had credit cards and
wait.
stuff.
Wait.
America.
Welcome to number. Yeah, you're right. Welcome to America, #1. Wait till you buy a house.
Oh yeah, that's
I
that's
know.
good. That's
And-
good stuff.
Yeah, and that's like what I want to do more than anything.
You
So
want to buy a house?
I want to buy a house so badly out here.
Really?
So I'm crazy. Yes.
Do it now.
I'm trying, but I can't though.
Oh yeah, because it's like have you priced real estate out here lately?
Well, even still,
Actually,
who's
there are lots of places in Riverhead Town
I hear
that you can find stuff for $200,000 and less.
right, but they're the taxes
The taxes in Riverhead Town are unbelievable.
because they spend their money like.
Drunken sailors in a
sailors.
whorehouse on a hot Friday night.
I like to say that. I say that all the time.
But they do. I mean, this town and the school district, God bless them. It's like, must be Friday. We're spending money.
Oh, speaking of which, be careful out there because, all right, I tried to drive. I drove to Greenport the other night, and literally, between Mattatuck and Peconic, I saw 6 cops. 6 of them.
Well, it's the end of the month. They got to get the quotas in for the
No, but
tickets.
that's what my friend said.
And I'm going to get one tomorrow. I can see one coming.
Why?
Inspection sticker.
Oh, get it done.
I can't. It's the 31st. How am I going to get it in the garage today?
I don't know.
Try.
Just try.
It's not going to happen.
So we've got Alie Shaper back. I'm very excited, and we get to finish our interview and finally
Yes.
because we kind of
Well, we got onto other interesting things.
I know.
We could
but
do this like 4 times and not finish.
I would love that though.
We should
I
make this
love
like
Alie.
a monthly thing.
I would love that.
Yeah, we can talk wine and whatever else.
A
And
soap
whatever.
opera.
Yeah.
We've been talking all
An
sorts of
ongoing
stuff.
series.
Yeah.
I would love that. Allie's so cool. So tell me about
Yeah.
so where do we get? Let's just start at
Yeah, let's
Croteau.
go right to
and-
Croteau.
So Croteau.
Yes, Croteau Vineyards in Southold. So the owners, Michael and Paula Croteau, are huge rosé fans, and so they've dedicated the winery entirely to rosé,
Which is so cool.
which is kind of a dream job. I've always been an amazing, a huge fan of rosé ever since I was in college, and I was that weird kid who didn't drink vodka anymore. I would go down to the wine store and get myself a nice rosé, and that would be my
so fancy.
weekly. I was a geek, still am.
Same.
But not much has changed in that department, but
It's honestly one of the best like labels to be, I feel.
mm-hmm.
It's like you're a geek. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm smart. That
I'm
sucks.
totally down with it. I wear that freak flag. Yeah.
Yes, nice. Oh, I love this morning. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess now I'm turning into a rosé geek. But I've been chatting with Michael and Paula for some months about hey, but it might be great to work together and we both work out of the Premium Wine Group facility in Mattituck. And so it sort of became a natural fit when we started talking more seriously about collaborating on the rosés. And it is really collaborative between the three of us. They have a very, very distinct vision of what they want to make with their rosés. And so as a consulting winemaker for them, it makes the job really not only a fun challenge because it pushes me to go beyond my own style for my own brand, but it also makes the job very much easier because every week we'd have a conversation about, okay, we need to approach this style and we would like to see this rosé go in this direction with flavor and so on. So we just worked so smoothly together, and it was so fun. And what's really fun about the Croteau line is that they're really exploring these subtle differences in rosé. And it's easy to think of rosé as just sort of pink and maybe fruity and sweet, but it's so much more beyond that.
Right.
It's just as variable as white wines or red wines, because you can make rosé out of pretty much anything that you can make white or red out of.
Right. I imagine that actually it's the most variant in that way, because you can make it out of so many things, and it's like.
Yeah, and you have the whole range of white and red wine grapes to work with.
That's amazing.
So, a more traditional way of making rosé is to use only red wine grapes, but, and certainly the French would argue, many French winemakers would argue that is the only thing to do is to work with only red grapes. But, for example, one of the wines under the Croteau line, it's called Chloe, and it's 98% Sauvignon Blanc with a little bit of red wine blended in. So it's uber pale, and it's tropical, and it's just racy and thirst-quenching, and their fruit from their vineyard is gorgeous. That wine makes itself. I basically am just the caretaker.
Where are their grapes?
They have their own estate vineyard off of South Harbor Road, across the street from their tasting barn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so probably most of their fruit comes from their own
I've
property.
seen it. I've seen it then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you've driven by the Croteau tasting room, you've gone
right by the
vineyard.
Grapes.
Yeah, right by the vineyard. So there's 6 still wine rosés in the lineup, and then 3 sparkling versions. So it's a total of 9 altogether. So there's a lot of room to play, and there's 3 rosés that are out of the still wines that are based upon Merlot, and they are what are called clonal selections. So a clone of a grape is basically, you can have Merlot and you can have different clones, and this is true for any
that
grape
are grafted
variety.
on.
Well, it's not so much grafted, but in nature there will be slight differences that crop up across different regions, and so they're all essentially Merlot genetically speaking, but they have slight differences. So it's like saying a person is blue-eyed or brown-eyed. They're all of the same variety, so to speak, but there's these minor differences.
Right, like one has a freckle.
Yeah.
In it or whatever.
Yeah, like Bukowski over here. He's got one brown eye, one blue eye. He's fancy,
Yes.
And that's his particular variety. That's his particular clone.
Yeah.
So, but what can come up with these clones is slightly different flavors. So, there's rosé from Merlot clone 181, and it's beautiful florals and saline and crispy. It's delicious. Then there's Merlot 314, and it tastes like melons and peaches. And then there's Merlot 3, and it's berries and cherries, but also,
it's like lipstick shades.
Kind of, yeah. And they all have slightly different colorings.
Yeah.
And also in the lineup, there's one of the wines is called Sauvage. So it's made out of Merlot clone 181, but instead of adding a commercially prepared yeast strain to ferment it, we allow the natural yeast strains to do the work. So the idea is that with many different yeast strains at work, each yeast strain produces a different result in aromas and flavors. So it creates this sort of very subtly complex rosé, and it's just got this little hint of sweetness on it too. So
that's so cool, and it's got to be so much fun for you, especially as a geek. If you're focusing in on one type, I feel like in order to get the variety, you're looking more at like you're talking about the clones. It's you're looking more at, all right, it's not just Merlot grapes. It's
Yeah, there's more to Merlot than just straight up Merlot. There's all these little interspecific.
so it's almost
varieties.
it's more like science.
Yeah, but it's very much art too, and that's the beauty of winemaking is that there is so much science behind it, and in a way, winemaking is. I've heard someone say before, it's a barely controlled microbiological experiment. Right?
Yes.
Because you can't actually get in there and do the cooking, so to speak. The yeast.
Yes.
Do the actual work, and you're basically the shepherd for these wines to make sure nothing goes awry, or
Right.
make sure there's enough nutrition, or control the temperature, and that controls the some of the final flavor output and so on. But then it's got a very artistic side, and it's almost a very spiritual thing too, because you sort of have to have a sense of zen about it.
Right.
Because in a lot of ways the wine will be what it is.
Right.
And you can only steer it and guide it to get it to about where you want. But as much as you can
That's
steer
gonna
it,
be so
and guide
hard
it.
when if you're, especially when you love it so much.
Yeah, because you want it to turn out well, and that's the whole idea of being a winemaker is that you can direct it in a certain amount. And I specifically don't use the word control, right?
Right. But it's
you
the
can-
truth. It's like there's some element of control, because if you are a good winemaker, I always knew this. I remember Kelly Urbanek. I
Yeah.
always thought it was one of the things that made me see how good of a winemaker she was. Was when you don't have the best year and you're creating and you're making excellent wine. That to me is
that's
like
a super
real
skill. Yeah.
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 That's how you know.
Because nature gives you one thing, and then the other half of the magic is what we as humans can do to make.
So
Yeah.
we're at the end again.
Oh, it goes so fast.
I know.
I'm telling you, we gotta do
We
this
gotta
all the
do
time.
it again. We're
Yeah.
gonna have to do this again. Coming up next, we've got Brookhaven supervisor Ed Romaine. Yeah, Bruce. All right, and see you guys next week.